All right, let's dive into the Kenilworth property market. We've been looking at the sales data for apartments and townhouses, what's called sectional title here in South Africa, for the third quarter of 2025. And honestly, the numbers tell a fascinating story of a market that's really completely divided. So let's get into it.
So, just how big is this market? Before we get into the details, it's always good to start with the big picture, just to understand the scale of what we're talking about.
And there it is. Just look at that number. Between July and September of 2025, over 138.5 million rand was spent on sectional title properties in Kenilworth alone. That is a ton of activity for just one suburb. But what does a number that big actually represent on the ground?
Well, that massive total comes from 65 separate sales over a 90-day period. That's almost one property sold every single day. But just averaging it out like that actually hides the real story. To find that, we have to split this market right down the middle.
And this is where things get really interesting. See, Kenilworth isn't just one single market. It's really two. You've got Kenilworth, and then you've got the much more premium area, Kenilworth Upper. And if you look at them together, you completely miss what's actually happening.
Wow. Okay, this right here makes the divide crystal clear. First, look at the number of sales. It's an almost perfect 50-50 split, 33 on one side, 32 on the other. But the prices, they are in totally different universes. The average property in Kenilworth Upper costs over 800,000 Rand more than one in regular Kenilworth. It's the same suburb by name, but it's a completely different market by price.
And if you're a visual person, this chart just says it all. That huge jump represents an almost 870,000 Rand premium, on average, just for the privilege of buying in Kenilworth Upper. So yeah, they're clearly operating in different price brackets. But is a bigger price tag the whole story? Not quite. You see, the average sale price can be a little bit misleading. I mean, it makes sense, right? A bigger property is naturally going to cost more. To really truly compare the value between these two areas, we need a better, more precise way to measure it. And that metric is the price per square meter. Now, this is really the gold standard for property analysis. What it does is it strips out the size of the apartment and tells you exactly what you're paying for each little square meter of space. It is the ultimate apples-to-apples comparison. And when we use this metric, oh boy, the value gap becomes even clearer. In standard Kenilworth, 1 square meter will set you back about 21,300 Rand. But in Kenilworth Upper, that jumps to nearly 28,000 Rand. That is a 30% premium. This proves you're not just paying for a bigger apartment, you are paying a serious premium for the location itself. Okay, so we've looked at the averages, and they're great for understanding the overall trends. But let's make this a bit more real by looking at the actual properties, the ones at the very top and the very bottom of the market. Now, the top end of the market isn't too surprising. We're seeing sales well over 3 and even 4 million Rand. But the real story here is at the bottom. I mean, look at that. A 400,000 Rand sale in Summerley Court. And that's not in regular Kenilworth. That's in the supposedly premium Kenilworth Upper. How does a sale like that even happen? What a fascinating outlier.
And that's really the power of looking at the raw data, isn't it? It shows you the exceptions that kind of break the rules. So was that 400,000 Rand sale a tiny studio apartment? Maybe a garage that was sold off as a separate unit? Or maybe it was a cash deal from a distressed seller? We don't know for sure, but it just goes to show that even in a premium market, there are always these incredible stories hidden between the trend lines.
So we've dug through a whole lot of data. What are the most important things to remember? What does all this actually mean for someone looking to buy, sell, or even just someone who's curious about the market? Let's boil it all down. First, the main takeaway is that Kenilworth is one suburb with two totally different markets. The price of entry into Kenilworth Upper is, on average, about 860,000 Rand higher. But the real measure of value, that price per square meter, shows you're paying a 30% premium for the location alone. And finally, never ignore the outliers. They're proof that the data always has a hidden story to tell. And that leaves us with one last question for you to think about. Now that you've seen the numbers, the averages, and those strange outliers, where do you think the real value is in Kenilworth's property market? Is it in the relative affordability of regular Kenilworth, or is it in trying to find one of those rare opportunities in the premium zone of Kenilworth Upper? The data can give us the map, but in the end, the definition of value, well, that's up to you.